So how important is story? What is the power of story? And why is it important that we consider story when we look at our spiritual development? Coming up right after this. Good afternoon, this is Lucky Links, and I've got a hold of the Olympus Tarot here to illustrate a point. This is based on the Greek myths. It's a very old tarot. I had it years ago, and my dog ate it, and then one of my clients had a brand new copy of it unopened, and she sent it to me. It's just absolutely wonderful. I've always loved mythology. I've always loved story. I was always fascinated by myths, mythology, fairy tales growing up, which is why I wanted to pursue writing, because I believed that there was some answer to how the mind worked, to humanity, to why we were here, and to what the real answers were in story. Recently, I started doing my astrological posts as fairy tales. I write a fairy tale. I wake up every morning. I look at the astrological influences of the day, and I build a fairy tale around those astrological influences so that people who read the story don't have to remember what the astrological influences are. They'll remember the story, and the story hopefully can help them move through the day with the pitfalls that might show up or something to think about. Now, when I started reading the tarot, I started looking at how it corresponded with story, and one of the first decks I used was this one was a very strong influence on me, and also the one relating to the fairy tales that was it Dorothy Morrison did. She wrote it. She did it for kids, right? And they were fairy tales. And one of the ways that I really became fluent in tarot was to look at the fairy tales that she put in each one of the cards, and it gave me a deeper understanding, and I had such a background in fairy tales that it was very easy for me to get a deeper understanding of each one of the archetypes. But these days I notice that there are a lot of people that don't even know what the myths are. They don't know what the stories are, and I think that's a shame, because what's happening right now during this time of change, at this very special time in human history, where things are ending and massive change is hitting us all, I think people need more than ever to understand story. Now, when you want to learn how to read the tarot, it really is a case of what's the subject, what's the verb, what's happening. So what's the object? What's the subject, what's the verb, what's the object? That's one of the quickest ways to become really fluent as a tarot reader and as a diviner. Each form of divination that we use, and I would say that the deeper we go into working with the gods and us who are Tibetan cosmologers, when we actually build out a person's astrology chart, the first thing I look for is what's the story that's going on here? What's the fairy tale that they're here actually trying to live? And when I actually do my charts for people, I write the report as a fairy tale. I say, well, once upon a time there was a child born, and I build out from there. I think this is extremely important right now, because the one thing that's being used against people that people don't understand is story. And when I was growing up, people always said to me, well, why are you studying story? Why are you going into that? You're never going to make a living doing that. And it turned out that by not listening to those people who wanted to play it safe, and by actually exploring the impulse to see where story would lead me, it led me to all sorts of discoveries, I think, that now are more important than ever as the world is changing and things are ending. The old fairy tales, the old stories, the old myths, they contain lessons for us that are hidden. There are hidden lessons, there are hidden messages for us in those stories that are supposed to help us to understand what is really important, which is one of the reasons why I started doing my daily posts as stories, so that people could see what lessons maybe we're not really acknowledging at this time as humanity is changing, and we're not really putting our values in the things that we really need to be putting our values in as things change. The one thing that I think that people are not seeing, and that they're missing out by not understanding story, is that they are not understanding narrative and what is going on right now in politics, in government, in healing, in religious movements, in bestsellers with gurus. Everything right now in our society is being fed to us as a story. And by people not understanding how story is built, they are finding themselves getting swept up in and being a victim of the story, rather than being able to stand back and say, hey, what are the components of the story that's being fed to me? Where is the story likely to go? Who's the hero? Who's the villain? Who's the narrator who's telling this all? Is the narrator reliable? Is our view or our point of view of the story reliable? All of these things that go into story are so important, and they mean everything right now. Let me just show you quickly what I mean. If I take 3 cards here, and I've got, say, the 3 of Swords, okay? Now, for those of you who don't know, this is Odysseus, and he's tied to the mast of his ship when they're about to encounter the sirens. This is Icarus. And I've got the 7 of Wands here, which are the centaurs. Now, let me show you how quickly your whole life, your whole perspective can change depending upon what you do with the story. So we've got we got 3 of Swords, we've got the 2 of Coins, or the 3 of Coins, 2 of Coins, and we got the 7 of Wands, okay? So we could say broken heart over continuing to stay in a partnership that maybe is not so fruitful. Okay, we could just read it straight as a tarot card. Now we could say that an individual is bound. Okay, now if we take his point of view, we take the point of view of the person who's bound. If we take the point of view of this guy right here, it's a very different story. He's rowing the boat while the other guy's bound. That's a difference in point of view. What if I'm the sirens who are trying to lure him in? That's a different point of view entirely. If I take this one, Icarus, for those of you who don't know the story of Icarus, I suggest you read it. It's a really good story, and it teaches a very good lesson. In this particular scene, Icarus is flying too high, close to the sun, and his father Daedalus is watching at the same time. If I take the point of view of Icarus, I will have one experience. If I take the point of view of Daedalus watching him, I will have another experience. And this is simply the centaurs. If I take the point of view of this centaur, well, then I've got one experience. If I take the point of view of another centaur, I've got this experience. And if I take the point of view of, say, a human being who's watching, I would have another experience entirely. In each one of these pieces of the story, depending upon whose point of view I take, will make a completely different outcome of the story. A man is bound from flying too high and seeing something that he was not prepared to see. Or I'm trying to rescue my friend who is in pain, seeing him do something that's going to ultimately lead to his destruction and need a great deal of healing from it. Those are 2 very different stories. As you continue to work, as those of you who are readers, you might want to consider this as a technique to do when you do readings for people. For those of you who are just dealing with what's going on right now in society, ask yourself, what happens if I take another person's point of view? What happens if I look at the characters and see what the story would be like from that person's point of view? What does that person have to gain? What does that person have to lose? What might that person's motivations be? The problem is that we are all looking at things from here, from our own perspective, and we're not seeing any of the bigger picture, or we're not moving around the story to see what other possibilities might be and what other things might be going on, or how the story might shift if we look at it from a different perspective. Right now, as things are changing, as things are ending, there's going to be a lot of chaos, a lot of confusion, a lot of people coming at a lot of other people trying to tell a story. You can go crazy if you're not careful. Know this. Every character in a story wants something. What is it that the character that you're looking at, or you as the character, wants? What are the challenges that one needs to overcome to get that, whatever it is that they want? What changes have to come out in the person in order for them to actually experience the thing that they want to change? What needs to be sacrificed? What will the end result be? These are just some concepts from story that I think are extremely important right now, and that if people actually considered them, might give them much greater insight into the world, into what's going on with them, into anything that they're trying to learn, into any changes that they're currently trying to make, into trying to fix their karmic habits or purify things or make things better. If you consider these questions, if you consider these concepts, I think that you may make some wonderful insights, and it may allow you some real realizations. Now, I'm Lucky Links, as always, wishing you success and good fortune in all that you do. Tarot is just one of the ways that I use story. Really, what fascinates me now, as I work with people's Tibetan astrology charts, I can really see what the fabric of their story is. The tarot just gives us a view from the ego point of view, what the person's ego thinks of themselves. But when we look at astrology, when we look at deeper divination when consulting the gods, there's different points of view. Here I get someone's ego. When I consult the gods, I get their point of view. When I look at someone's astrology, I get actually what came in with them from their karmic habits, what their habitual patterns are, and how they're likely to view things, how others are likely to view them, and what their general habits are likely to bring out in their story. If you would like to get a reading from me, 779-302-8009 or conjurehope@gmail.com. If you would like to take a class with me on how to read the tarot, how to read playing cards, how to read Mexican Loteria, how to read crystal balls, how to read Lenormand, contact me, same number. And if you would like to get your Tibetan chart done or your crystal mirror, where I actually build out what is a portal, and we look at what the elemental energies are and how that's affecting your story, and then what the story is from there. Whatever it is, you're living a fairy tale. Everyone else is in this fairy tale with you. Depending upon what perspective you come at it from, depending upon what motivation you come at it from, depending upon where you look at the story, will tell you something much deeper than you may already be seeing. So consider that as you move forward in your lives now, dealing with change, dealing with what's going on in the world. And hey, if you'd like to get your chart done, if you'd like to get your a reading or your crystal mirror, contact me and we'll set it up for you. 779-302-8009 or conjurehope@gmail.com. If you'd like to know more about story, or if you'd like me to focus specifically on what story or certain aspects of story and how they might be affecting all of us right now, then let me know, put it in the comments below, and I'll do a video on it.